Okay, so here we are live once again with the last of the four uh, Batman figures that I got this week from Amazon. And this is Batman 66 Nightwing. Yes, even though the series only lasted till 1969 and Nightwing didn't really become a thing until the mid 80s, they still managed to get a Nightwing figure into this line somehow. And the reason's interesting is when they did these Batman 66 comics, you can see Mike Allred provided some art on the back there. That means it's from the comic. Uh, they actually did a mini series called Batman 66 meets Wonder Woman 77. And of course, anybody who knows anything about Wonder Woman knows, 1977, that would have been the Linda Carter Wonder Woman television show. So yeah, they had a crossover between the Adam West version of Batman and the Linda Carter version of Wonder Woman in the comics. And I guess since they figured Robin would be a bit older by then, might as well go ahead and have him become Nightwing. And you can see they designed him like a 70s version of the original Nightwing costume. A little more jumpsuit like, a little more along the lines of certain cultural icons of that time. It's very reminiscent of the jumpsuits worn by Elvis and Evil Knievel, which kind of makes sense. It's got that wide collar to it, like those jumpsuits had. It's got a little bit of a, a low opening here, so you can see his chest hair, and I think they made him quite a bit larger than Dick Grayson was on the television show. Although Burt Ward, yeah, hadn't really grown that much. Remember, he was like 20 years old when he first started the show, so he was already pretty much as tall as he was going to get. But we'll compare. I've got Robin over here, so we can compare the size difference. You can always see from looking at him in the package. Yeah, he's going to be quite a bit larger than Robin was. You got the digital render of the character's portrait on the back, so we can see it does, somewhat resemble Burt Ward, even though it's got longer hair and sideburns, and like I said, quite a bit taller and more buff. I think that if I were designing this figure, I probably would have kept him about the same size as Robin, because again, Burt Ward didn't exactly have a growth spurt between. You can see Burt Ward still playing Robin in the 1970s. They did those Legends of the Superheroes TV specials, and he pretty much still looks the same as he did on the television show. Still looks and sounds like the Boy Wonder, even though he's got to be in his 30s by that point. But he was still useful enough to pull it off. Anyway, let's go ahead and open it up, because I've been looking forward to this figure for a while. I grew up in the 80s, and the time period where I really started seriously reading comics was the 80s. So, of course, I remember Marv Wolfman and George Perez on the new Teen Titans. And I remember the evolution of the character of Dick Grayson from Robin to Nightwing quite well. So I always kind of wondered what it would have been like if, if Dick had have become Nightwing in the continuity of the old television series. And where is my X-Acto knife now? I was opening some packages the other day, and I did grab my. There it is. I just couldn't remember where it would have wound up. It was underneath the little tripod thing that I put my phone on when I shoot these. So he's got the dreaded rubber tabs around his waist. Go ahead and get him out of there. You gotta have the rubber tabs on there, because otherwise it'd be way too quiet getting this out of the bubble. That's what I was told. All right, so I'm going to put that back together. We'll toss that in the recycle later. And the two accessories that Nightwing comes with are these two automatopoeias. One says Crunch, one says Bronk. And these, of course, are made to clip onto the wrist of the figure while he punches bad guys. And you can see that they are in Nightwing colors, kind of a light blue shade with for the flash behind the yellow letters, so they match up with his outfit because they like to do that. So that's the sound effects that you get there. Hey, let's have him actually punch a bad guy since I've got these on here, and we've got the Joker handy, so we can punch out the Joker. The way that they handled the Batman characters in the Wonder Woman storyline was kind of controversial because they did have showed what happened with Batman after the television series, and it was actually kind of dark, especially for like an Adam West version of Batman, because what wound up happening was in this continuity is that the Joker had actually killed Alfred and Batman had actually killed the Joker. So a lot of people didn't like that because of all versions to have killed the Joker, you've got the Adam West version of Batman. But I didn't really mind so much because I'm like, oh, it's just a comic book. It's not what really happened on the show. It's just kind of an Elseworldsy kind of thing. And I've seen darker stuff done with the Adam West versions of the characters. Anybody who's read the old Solo series that DC put out and the Mike Allred issue of Solo, that was actually the first time he worked on Batman, and he did a story that was a tribute to the 1966 TV show, but it took it into some dark places. But by the end of it, I think everything turned out okay. I don't want to be too spoilery about it, but if you haven't read that Solo comic, definitely check it out. It's really cool. All right, so let's have a look-see at these two characters next to each other. Well, first, let's go ahead and have a look at him next to Batman. And I don't have the regular Adam West version of Batman over here, but I do have the Filmation version, which is pretty much the same body. And you can see that Nightwing stands about the same height as Batman, and actually looks like he's a bit bulkier as well. Now, he is wearing this kind of loose-fitting jumpsuit. It's not like superhero tights. Like I said, it's more like an Elvis or an Evel Knievel kind of thing. So that does make him look a little thicker too. But honestly, I feel like this character really should have been made at the height of Robin. And even if you look at the two characters next to each other, like it looks like to me that Nightwing's head is quite a bit larger than Robin's head. So I kind of wonder if maybe that was the intention. If this was originally designed to be a much shorter figure than it actually was, and they just kind of accidentally made it like the standard height. But you can see when we stand them next to each other that he's about half a head taller than Robin, and his head is a bit larger. So, but he does look like Burt Ward. Does have a little bit more of a mature look. Actually looks a lot like the way I remember Burt Ward looking on that Legends of the Superheroes special I was talking about. The costume is mostly a black costume with some light blue over the shoulders, light blue around the waist like a belt, light blue gloves and light blue cuffs on the ends of the sleeves for the jumpsuit, but with some black cuffs at the end of that. They kind of look like the wristbands that Nightwing had in this costume in the comics. When you just look at this much of it, it looks pretty much like just a more jumpsuity version of that costume. But when you get down to the lower part of it, hello, we got some bell bottoms there. So this is definitely 1970s. It's got a little bit of a cutout, so you can see I don't know if it's coming across on the camera that well, but you can see the laces on the boots. So that's kind of cool. Again, this is a Nightwing that's supposed to be a little more 1970s style, a little more inspired by outfits worn by Elvis and Evel Knievel at the time. So, give him a little bit more of a 1970s flair. Now, the original Nightwing costume in the comics is often referred to affectionately as the Disco Elvis costume. So there always was a bit of a connotation between Nightwing and Elvis So it probably shouldn't really be surprising that if you're going to do like a full-on 70s version of Nightwing, you incorporate even more Elvis into it. So they did sculpt in the feathery texture on the yellow trim rather than just printing it on like they often do. Do I have the superpowers? Yeah, I got the superpowers Nightwing right here. So this is the 90s version of Nightwing's outfit. And you can see they just printed the feather texture onto that one, but they actually sculpted it onto this one. Of course, this one also is like a repaint of the previous Nightwing figure, which was a repaint of Green Lantern with a new head and a new right arm. So that they kind of had to print it onto that version. They didn't really have another choice. But this is only going to be a Nightwing figure. It's just a bespoke Nightwing figure. I could see them maybe doing a repaint of it at some point or another, though. Like if you wanted to do like more of a 2000s-ish kind of take on Nightwing, you could probably just repaint this in all black and then repaint the yellow parts in blue. And I think that would look a bit like the more modern Nightwing costume, and that might look really cool. But anyway, let's get into the articulation. So Nightwing can't look up very far because he's got that kind of longish hair at the back. He can look down about that far. So not much range of motion there. He can tilt his head kind of quizzically from side to side. But I've mentioned before in these Batman 66 reviews, I'm pretty sure that like you're just supposed to be able to rotate the head all the way around, and that any kind of side to side movement you get on it is just gravy. So, oh yeah, he's actually got the chest hair printed onto the chest. I don't know if you guys can see that. It was the 70s, so they want to give him that 1970s sort of look. Although, honestly, I think of Dick Grayson as being kind of smooth. I don't know if he's just naturally hairless or he waxes, but I kind of figure Dick Grayson doesn't have much in the way of chest hair. Batman, of course, has got a carpet of virility because we've seen that in the Neil Adams artwork, so that's absolutely canon. But this version of Nightwing has some chest hair. All right, so Nightwing's arms rotate all the way around at the shoulders, move up about that far. So not the best range of motion we've seen on these 1966 figures, but not bad either. Nightwing has a single joint of articulation at the elbow, and it bends about that far, extends about that far, and it does rotate all the way around. So that's nice. The wrists rotate all the way around. There we go. Absolutely no. Oh no. There's a turn of the wrist, or turn of the waist, and it should theoretically go all the way around. But since it's got that V-shaped belt to it, that's going to kind of hinder it somewhat. You probably could turn it all the way around, but I don't want to take a chance on like warping this belt, so I'm not going to. Speaking of warping the belt, the legs kick up about that far, and it does indeed bump into the belt a little bit. It's kind of a soft, rubbery plastic, so I don't think it's in too much danger of getting permanently warped unless you were to leave the leg up in that position or leave his waist twisted in whatever position. That might kind of make it stick a little bit, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going to take the chance. And then, of course, he's got a single joint of a single joint of articulation at the knee, which bends about that far. And, of course, the knee does rotate all the way around. So that's cool. No ankle articulation whatsoever, no toe articulation or anything fancy like that, no boot cut. It's just a solid leg from the knee down. So this was nicely executed. It looks very much like the costume that Nightwing wore in the comic book. Matches up with that artwork pretty well. Actually does look kind of like Burt Ward. My only real complaint about it, like I said, is they made him too tall. I think they should have made this figure the same height as Robin, and I kind of suspect with the with some of the things that I've noted about this sculpt that it was intended to be at the same height as Robin, but somehow accidentally got made to be a bit taller. But I think it would have worked out better if he had been the same height as Robin. But he still looks pretty cool. Let's go ahead and see him next to Batman again. And while this is not the Adam West version of Batman per se, I mean, it is an Adam West version of Batman, but it's not the live action Adam West Batman. I kind of feel like it's appropriate to put our 70s version of Batman next to our 70s version of Nightwing, since this is from the 70s Filmation cartoon. But then again, it's pretty much the same model that was used in the 60s Filmation cartoon, so it's still a 60s Batman. We're getting into the weeds here. The point is, they look nice together, don't they? Might as well get one more shot of him with the Joker, since I've got the Joker over here. Man, if I'd have thought about it, I'd have brought Batgirl over here so we could see it. Oh, I've got the black Batgirl outfit, so that'll look good. Yeah. So there he is. Because I know some of you guys like that ship, so we're gonna have them together. There we go. There's and of course it's the comic book version of Batgirl with the black outfit. So she looks really good with him. Nightwing has long been one of my favorite characters. I'd met both Marv Wolfman and George Perez at various conventions, and I'd had a chance to tell both of them that I really liked what they did with the character of Dick Grayson, and I appreciated his evolution from being a mere teen sidekick to really coming into his own as a superhero. You know, when I first encountered Robin, it would have been during the Super Friends cartoon, and this kid was always following Batman around, and I never quite understood why. I mean, it was a superhero team, so they all teamed up with each other, but you never really saw Robin on his own on Super Friends. Anytime you saw Robin, it was always like he was just one of Batman's accessories, something that came with him. And then when I saw the Adam West television series and reruns, there he is on this show. It's like, oh great, he followed Batman onto his own show now. He's so it took me a minute to figure out that, oh, he's a character that's actually in the Batman comics. That's why he's always following Batman around. But then again, when I was first reading comics, it was the 1970s, and Dick had already gone off to college, and he was still operating as Robin at the time, and he actually did have solo comic book stories. But it was when I read Teen Titans that I felt like the character was really given a chance to shine. And that was when I started to really become a fan of Robin. And it was kind of funny how it happened, where, like, you know, the character just kind of naturally evolved, for one thing. And for another thing, you know, the people in the Batman offices kind of wanted Robin back. They wanted to have Robin back in the comics. Not only that, but they wanted to have Robin go back to being a kid. And I think the original idea was they were just going to have, you know, Dick become a kid again, and just like how comics do sometimes, just kind of retcon it, just kind of like he's in high school again. Just go with it. And you know, Marv Wolfman didn't like that, because he's like, that'll go against everything we've done with this character in the past few years. And I'm not sure who it was who came up with the idea, but somebody had the bright idea that, like, you know, let's just have a new character become Robin, and we'll have Dick Grayson become his own superhero. And the character Jason Todd became Robin, and, you know, there was, to put it kindly, there was a bit of a rough patch with that character. I think they finally found their way with Jason Todd, but it seemed like for a while they just couldn't figure out anything consistent to do with him, and then wound up, you know, killing the character off. We'll probably get into that some other point, if I haven't already talked about that in the Red Hood video before. But the evolution of Dick Grayson into Nightwing was, of course, a success, and he's I think become a much more popular character since then than even he was at the time. Maybe at any point since, like, the Golden Age, where, like, Robin was ridiculously popular and everybody was copying Robin. During the Golden Age, you had, you know, Captain America had Bucky, Sandman had Sandy, you know, Mr. Scarlet had Pinky. You know, kids' sidekicks were all the rage back then. You know, Green Arrow had Speedy, etc., etc. So, but yeah, I also think there was a little bit more to it that's not really ever officially acknowledged. But if you remember, there were some uh, uh, Say No to Drugs kind of PSA comics that were put out by Keebler, and they had a character in there called the Protector, who was clearly in the first issue intended to be Robin and redrawn to be this new character. And that was because Keebler did, while they bought the rights to the Teen Titans, they didn't buy the rights to Robin, because that was already tied up with Nabisco with their superhero cookies. So they weren't allowed to use Robin. So they had to redraw the character to be a completely different character in this comic book. And I kind of suspect that was part of the reason too. Like, if they were going to have Teen Titans tie-ins on their own, they couldn't really be beholden to, leaving their main character of the comic book out like that. So by turning Nightwing, or Dick Grayson, into Nightwing and having him be his own superhero, then technically he's not really part of that Batman group of characters anymore. So they can go ahead and use him in other stuff. And in fact, that was the loophole that wound up putting Nightwing into the DC Cosmic cards that was it Skybox put those out in the 90s. And they didn't have the rights to any of the Batman characters because those were tied up in the rights that Topps had to Batman vis-a-vis the 1989 movie and its sequels. Or at least Batman Returns. I think Fleer got the rights to Batman Forever, but it's opening a whole nother ball of wax. But yeah, that was why they were able to get Nightwing into those DC cards before they had the rights to Batman. And I'm just going off on a tangent here. But yeah, I suspect that's part of the reason also why Nightwing kind of became his own character. But by the late part of the 1990s, like the bloom was kind of off the rose in terms of Teen Titans. It had kind of run its course, and Batman comics were doing better than ever. Oh, early 90s is what I meant to say. Batman comics were doing better than they had been since at least the 60s, partially because of the success of the 1989 movie. So they wanted to bring Nightwing back into the fold of Batman comics. It seems to happen a lot. And this time they did bring Nightwing back, and he wound up getting his own solo series with his adventures in Bloodhaven. But that's another story. The point is that Nightwing is a really important part of the legacy of the Batman mythos in general, and the character of Dick Grayson specifically. So I'm really happy to have that part of the comic book history acknowledged in this Batman 1966 action figure line, even though it was something it would have been impossible to have ever had Nightwing on the television series for several reasons. But we get to see what he might have looked like if they had actually done a Nightwing in the 1970s. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, that's it for these Batman 1966 figures. I hope you enjoyed it, but that's not the end of Batman 66 technically, because I got something else I gotta open, and I'm planning on doing this on Saturday. But if I don't do it on Saturday, I'll come back and do it next week. So we got the Batman from the Bat manga, the actual Japanese Batman comics made in the 1960s. So when I open this up, I'll talk about its connections with the television series and why it's relevant to that. I'm hoping at some point they'll do a recolor of the Adam West figure in these colors. I think that would be really cool. And I'm just going to keep mentioning that anytime anytime the subject comes up. But if you want to make sure you don't miss that, make sure that you like and subscribe, all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Nightwing, both this figure and the character in general. And we will talk to you next time. Bye.